Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Mercury retrograde, important dates to be aware of. This is going on from November 9th until November 29th, 2025. And we're going to talk about Mercury as an archetypal energy, what it governs, what retrograde affects, and we'll go a little deeper into what exactly retrograde is. So I'm excited to dig into it. As always, a reminder, I'm Danielle Knapp. I am a therapist and also an astrologer, and I weave together these two practices to invite us to dive deeper into our internal landscape so that we can allow the planets to be guides for us in how we can continue to expand our self-awareness and show up as our most authentic selves. Okay, so let's talk about what retrograde is. When we look at it from an astronomical view, what we see is what can be the illusion of a planet going backwards in the sky. What's really happening is if you imagine you are in your orbit or you're out on a hiking trail and you're traversing down the path, and then you get to a point and you're like, oh, I need to go back and get something. And so you go back, you've already gone this direct, you've already covered this part of the trail, but now you're looking at it with a different, from a different perspective because you're walking it backwards. Then you get back to the thing that you needed, you turn around, and then you're hitting that part of the trail for the third time until you get to that point where you turned around, then you sail off into new territory. So the way we break this down in astrology is we say we have the pre-shadow, the actual retrograde, and the post-shadow. The pre-shadow is your first time through that part of the trail. Okay, so you're just moving through. And then we turn around to go back to get whatever we needed from before. And now we're going backwards. That's the retrograde time span. And then we get the thing we need and we turn back, and now we're going into the post-shadow, that third time covering the same ground that we've already traveled over twice. Then we'll get to that point where we did our first turnaround and we sail off into a new portion of the hike and we're seeing new sights and new things. So when we look at the retrograde cycle as including the pre and post shadow, we're looking at much more time on the calendar. So the pre-shadow for this Mercury retrograde began on October 20th. And some would say that this is kind of the preview. This is the pamphlet. Like you're walking down this trail and you're getting a feel of territory that you're going to be visiting again twice more with different perspective. So you can look back to your calendars, your journals, your date books. Was there anything coming up for you from October 20th until November 9th? Because that's the pre-shadow. Then the planet puts on the brakes, turns around, goes backwards, which when we look at this from an energetic standpoint, there's more of like that internal deep dive. And this is where we're implementing the rule of re's. We're rereading things, we're revisiting, we're responding, we're reacting to things. Reality, realign, recall, like all the different re's that come up, all the different re words that you can think of. Those apply during retrograde. And then when we go into the post-shadow, that's going to be November 29th to December 16th. So when we're looking at the full cycle, we're going from October 20th to December 16th, where we're going to be doing this zigzag pattern. And I have a graphic that I will post at the end of this video. And I'll timestamp it. So if you want to get to that graphic and just look at it, sometimes it's helpful to see that Z pattern. But I also really like the hiking analogy to kind of wrap your mind around like what exactly is happening here. Okay. So when we see this out in the sky, and it's all an illusion in the sky, what's really happened is like Earth in the orbit, Earth has sped up and is like, looks like it's passing a planet, or the planets have slowed down, because it's not even circles. It's kind of like a track, and you've got someone in the far outer lane, and then someone in the closer lane. It looks like they're passing them, but really what's happened, and for a split moment there, it might look like they're going backwards because they're passing on that inner lane. That's what retrograde is. And so when we're talking about Mercury is in charge of some specific aspects of being a person, being in communities, being alive. And so let's go deeper into what exactly Mercury governs so we can notice how this retrograde and the shift in direction and perspective, what areas of our life might be affected. Okay, so who is Mercury? Mercury is said to be Hermes, the Greek god with the wings on his shoes who would deliver the messages. Very fast moving. And even if you look again from an astronomy viewpoint, if you look at Mercury's orbit, it's moving fast. I mean, zip, zip, zip. It's going out to Venus, back to the sun, you know, back out to Mars, all the way back, you know, it's just zipping around, like so busy, so much happening. And Mercury by nature is a fast moving planet, it has the shortest orbit, so it's moving very quickly. And Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year. So you are not a stranger to the shift in perspective, the shift in energy that happens with retrogrades with Mercury. So when we think about Mercury, we're thinking about the mind. Okay, this is how we think about things. This is our mental processing. This is ideas. This is concept. Mercury also governs how we speak, communicate, how we connect, movement and transportation. Hello, airports in November and canceling flights and all of that business. It's so Mercury retrograde flavored, and that's what we're experiencing right now. And also the power of symbol making. Really what Mercury, from like a real high level concept, Mercury is in charge of all of the space betweens, which that's kind of ungrounded for you. So let me ground this in. Okay, so anything, you know, like when we have an idea and we share it with somebody, we're speaking and communicating. We're connecting the space between. When you are buying a new car and getting rid of an old car, there's paperwork and things you're signing as you're moving from the old car to the new car. That's why you hear all this stuff like don't sign contracts or buy a car during Mercury retrograde. You got to live your life, right? So don't get too superstitious with that. It's just slow down and do your rule of reads. Reread everything that you're going through if you're signing contracts during Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is in charge of details. So when he's going a different direction, you know, we want to be paying close attention to the details. Mercury is also called the trickster. So there's some impish energy that can come up with Mercury. But if we think about anything, any space between, okay, that is mercurial. That is what Mercury is governing. And, you know, like even art as a form of communication, that's actually considered Mercury, whereas Venus is the creation of art. The way that art communicates with us and sends a message or a feeling, that is Mercury. So, and another one I love too is that Mercury is the nervous system, because that's how our organs communicate with each other and communicate with the brain. And I just think that that is so fascinating. So we're thinking of all those space betweens, which is also really interesting because Hermes was the only god who could travel into the underworld and give messages to Hades. And so he was able to travel between these two worlds. And so when we're thinking about how do we connect, connection is all Mercury. How do we connect two entities? You know, if you're traveling from, this is why Mercury governs travel. You're going from one place to another. So Mercury is governing that space between. So these are all the areas of life that can get a little bit, it can get a little upheavaled. Is that right? Upheavaled? It can get a little tossed around during Mercury retrograde. And this is a particularly messy Mercury retrograde because it begins in the sign of Sagittarius. So let's talk about what happens when Mercury is in Sagittarius. So the zodiac sign of Sagittarius, this is the script. You know, we know that the planets are the actors, the zodiac signs are the scripts that the planets use to express themselves. And so Sagittarius, you know, it's a centaur shooting the arrow to the sky. It's the truth seeker. Sagittarius is all about the big picture. Sagittarius is all about learning through context and about context. It likes to have that high up view of everything, zoomed out, right? And it's like details, schmetails, like no. Well, Mercury is all about the details. So, and symbols and like maps and like all of that, that's all Mercury. And Sagittarius is like, I don't want to be bothered with that. So Mercury has to work extra hard in Sagittarius. Mercury rules Gemini and is considered in fall in Sagittarius, because anytime a planet is across the zodiac wheel from a sign that it's in rulership of, it's considered in fall, which means that it is just, in detriment, not fall, in detriment. It just means that the planet is having to work a little bit harder to be able to express itself. It's not optimal for what the planet naturally governs to be able to feel resourced and carry through in the way that Mercury would prefer. So he spends a portion of this in Sagittarius because he turned around to go retrograde at 6 degrees Sagittarius, and he's going to travel all the way back to 20 degrees Scorpio, and then turn around there and sail on to new territory post 6 degrees Sagittarius, December 16th. So we know that he's going to work hard in Sag, but then he's also spending a large portion of this in the deeps, in the underworld, in Scorpio. So there's just kind of this little like flare up back into Scorpio and able to go back into the deeps. And there's something really striking about this because retrograde already is that turnaround. Like when we're talking about retrograde, sometimes, okay, again, in the astronomy of it, the planet is literally closer to Earth. So there is a closeness that we can feel to the planet's energy. So if we think about this psychologically, it's going to be more of that kind of, it's harder maybe to be objective. Like if we get too close, we can't hold perspective around something happening. It's like we need somebody who's not in the soup with us to be like, hey, that's messed up, but we've adapted and we're in it. So we have this like the blinders on and we're like, oh, I don't even notice it. Everything's fine. But someone outside of that is like, I don't know, that doesn't look so fine. And so that's kind of the idea with retrograde planets, is that we get really close to it and it can be harder to hold perspective. It can be harder to be flexible. It can be harder to be objective with whatever is coming up. And so that's where we can be a little bit more reactive when, shit hits the fan because our travel plans got totally upended. It can be really hard to stay flexible in that space. So, because we are close to it though, there's also an accessibility to the energies, the themes, the patterns, the dynamics that are coming up. Like we can hold it a little bit. And there's something I think really striking about when we move back into Scorpio, where we're also activating water trine and a kite on new moon and all sorts of things. I'll share those dates in a little bit for you to be on the lookout for. We're going back into the deeps, back into shadow work. That's where we've been. Here we are in Scorpio season. It's like we are in it. We are in the deeps. We're ready to kind of penetrate into the shadow and get and see ourselves and these dynamics and these parts of us on a really intimate level. And so kind of thinking about, again, what came up October 20th to November 9th around the mind, how you're thinking about stuff, how you're mentally processing, how you're communicating, how you're connecting. And then, of course, there's like tech. This is how I am connecting to you right now through technology. So that's why a lot of times people will say like, oh, the internet went down, Mercury retrograde. That's where all of that comes from, because it's the space between of how we are communicating, how we're getting messages across. Okay, so moving back into Scorpio, and then it's going to turn around and sail out. Now, let's go back to the hiking analogy. If we're traveling through something, and let's say there's a slow moving creature on this path with you, and you pass it up because you're going fast, you're Mercury, you pass it up, you turn around on the trail and you come to go back, you're going to bump into that creature again. And then depending on how slow that creature is, you turn around again, you might see that creature for a third time. So when we talk about this in astrology, it's called a triple transit. When Mercury in his retrograde, or any planet in their retrograde, makes contact with another planet 3 times. And there is a cycle here that's happening. So let's talk about some of those triple, and then there's a double transit, and then the new moon that's also very much involved with Mercury retrograde this year. Talk about Mars and Venus and how they interact with Mercury during this Mercury retrograde. So Mars, the body, how we take action out in the world. This is going to be our passion. This, Mars is swinging his sword. He is out there, in that yang energy, that masculine energy. And then Mercury is the mind. Okay, so this is the mind connecting with the body and taking, ideally, aligned action on things. So the first time that Mercury and Mars came together in a conjunction where they blended their energies and, created this third thing, that was on October 20th when the pre-shadow began. And this was at 19 degrees Scorpio. It's striking, okay, we're in Scorpio, we're down in the depths, we're down in the dark, we're in the shadow. And then also Black Moon Lilith was conjunct them as well. Reminder, Black Moon Lilith, she is the dark feminine, the uninvited feminine, they say. So she can bring shame, she can bring jealousy, she can bring envy, a weaponizing of shame often. And then Scorpio is our shadow, and we know abundance of shame lives in our shadows. Typically, that is the only place that shame hangs out. So, that happened October 20th. So again, go back into your calendars or your daybooks or your journals if you keep one of those, and you can kind of see what was going on, because now with Mercury kind of going deeper internal with the mind and the processing, we'll join Mars again on November 12th at 6 degrees Sagittarius, right where it turned around. Is that correct? Yeah, I guess so, because it's in 2 days. So yeah, turning around. And when Mercury turns around, he is going super, super slow. Actually, it said that he's like stationing when he's, I'm going to double check that for you guys really quickly, not to waste your time, because I did this ahead of time. Let's just check it really quickly. But when a planet stations, they slow down. Okay, yeah, it is. It's at the early degrees, because it's almost 7 degrees of Sagittarius when Mercury turns around. And so he's going real slow. He's like doing this wide U-turn real slow, and Mars is still direct, so he's still kind of moving slowly. So right at that 6 degree mark before he moves into the rest of his retrograde territory. So right where he decides to stop, he turns around and is like, oh, hello, Mars. And so he's meeting up with Mars in the fire sign, where there's a lot of action. We know in fire, there's a lot of inspiration, hopefulness, optimism, and available energy and action to take. And then he's going to travel back, and then he will come and he will hit Mars to complete this Mars cycle way after retrograde. We're talking next year, January 17th at 25 degrees Capricorn. So it can be interesting just to notice the storylines that are happening in your individual life or in your processing that could have began November 20th. You will revisit them here in a couple days on November 12th. And then this kind of like third go at it in January 17th. Okay, and so then the other personal planet we're going to talk about is Venus. And so while Venus and Mercury didn't have a first conjunction because of her retrograde or Mercury's last retrograde, he got close to her, but she never quite caught up, and then he sailed on into the rest of his journey. So they will be coming together for the first part of this cycle on November 24th at 22 degrees Scorpio. And then Mercury will move on, and he goes pretty quickly. So they will not join up again until January 27th at 12 degrees Aquarius. So for you astro nerds out there, if you're hearing any of these degree points that are close to your planets, heads up, because this is going to affect you personally, especially your sun or moon or any of your personal planets, Mercury, Venus, or Mars. Okay. So get those guys out of the way. So there's something else that always happens during Mercury retrograde. And when Mercury, because he stays very close to the sun, he's always, I believe, within 17 degrees of the sun. So when he turns around, the sun is always on that trail somewhere. So he's going to be coming back, and he will end up in the heart of the sun, which is called cazimi. That's a fun word to say, and it just means that the planet has landed in the heart of the sun. It has this halo around it, and it's very auspicious. It's a day where there can be lots of ideas, especially with Mercury, ideas and epiphanies coming through, like I never thought about it like that. And there's so much illumination and sight into your mental processing. What is really striking about this is that it happens on November 20th, at 28 degrees Scorpio, at the same time as the new moon. Now there's like a couple hours difference. Like the new moon happens in Central Time at like 12:47 a.m. And then at 3:45-ish, I wrote it down somewhere, 3:23 a.m. is when the cazimi is exact. So there is a cluster happening of these three planets. So this epiphanies, the new moon energy of planting seeds, dark of the night, something just so beautiful about that. And it's the tail of a kite that will be forming on November 20th, because guess who is over at 29 degrees Taurus? Uranus, the expect the unexpected, the lightning bolt planet. This is moving and shaking. There is a lot of activity. When we have Uranus and Mercury doing stuff together, they both are these they're busy. There's this kind of electricity to these planets, and that's the head of the kite. And then we have the tail of the kite because our favorite water grand trine is still flowing and flowing and flowing. And that is between, okay, we've got Jupiter over retrograde now at 25 degrees, Cancer, Saturn retrograde, 25 degrees Pisces, Mercury retrograde, 28 degrees Scorpio. Those are all the water signs making a big blue, beautiful triangle of just flow, flow, flow. We got the new moon right there at 28 degrees, and then creating that little tiny triangle on top of the big triangle to create the kite formation is Uranus, the wild card planet. So there is, I wish I had a better word. It's so striking. It is so striking, this formation. So November 20th is a day to pay attention to. Like it just feels like there's a lot of movement and a lot of activity. And sometimes, kite formations are all contained and closed. Sometimes that can be considered, like we can get ourselves into like behavioral ruts. But the more planets you have on the tail in the opposition, the more likely there is this like breaking out of ruts, because trines are all enclosed and we can just kind of get into a rut in that place. But it's pretty wild. So keep that in mind, because we've got those 3 planets at the base. We've got the water grand trine going. One notable mention for my astro nerds is that the moon is out of balance on this day too. So when a moon is out of balance, it doesn't follow the rules. So there's a lot coming up. Moon is your temperament. It's your emotions. It's how you feel safe, how you nurture yourself. The sun is your consciousness, your awareness, what you're able to see, how you move out in your solar energy out in the world. Mercury is the mind. And then we have the 2 social planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter saying, yes, yes, yes. Saturn saying, no, no, no. That's how they, that's their duality. That's really beautiful. They teach us in different ways. And then we have Uranus, this outer planet that is shaking things up at that last degree of Taurus, also retrograde. So much retrograde energy. This is a deep dive into self. The energy is going backwards. It's telling us slow down, but also go fast at the same time. Translate that however you choose. Lots coming up. And I think that hits on everything, like watch out for restlessness, stay flexible, follow your rules of re. Don't forget rest. That's a re word that starts with R-E. We're going to get through it. I think it's the most intense one of the year because of that Sagittarius piece of it. We're going to figure it out, and we'll be on the other side of it soon. So I'll be wishing you many blessings. There's so much opportunity here for you to continue to work with that water trine, just to let it clear, let it go, let it flow, let it out, and just kind of sacred surrender over and over. The sacred surrender of like, okay, let's just let it go. What needs to be continued to be cleared out? Let that water cleanse you. All right, wishing you ease, stay flexible, 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 and I'll be back soon with more information. Don't forget to subscribe and like. That really helps the videos and channels kind of get promoted to other people who haven't bumped into it yet. And as always, if you're interested in a birth chart reading, my website is danielleknapp.com, and if you're interested in working together therapeutically, that website is startwithintherapy.com. Okay, wishing you many blessings and lots of ease.